Hey everyone, meet Brian Welch. Brian is the lead guitar player for the band Korn, and in his world, everything is going as planned, Here's a kid who ever since high school wanted to be in a great band, so he puts in hard work and diligent practice, and he refines his craft, and finally, success is in his grasp. This kid from Bakersfield, California, has gotten to the point where he is in one of the biggest bands of all time. He's in Korn. Korn has sold 60 million albums. The money's just rolling in, and life is good for Brian Welch. Brian actually, he's used to the screaming and the cheering masses. He knows that there's people that are just pumping Korn music into their earbuds every day. And he has this sort of thing where his fans think he's got it all together. I mean, he's living everyone's dream, right? He's on MTV. He's constantly a cultural icon. He's being interviewed all the time. He's got money and cars and houses and everything that you could possibly want, Brian Welch can have. Anything the world has to offer, Brian Welch can get. So, why would someone with everything want to do drugs? Well, I mean, what's the point, right? His life is great. Why take drugs? What more could he possibly want out of life? What Brian's going to discover is that in his life, he has a real challenge in his life. He's got this tremendous gifting. He's got this tremendous talent. He can do incredible things. But what he really doesn't have a whole lot of, there's two things: purpose and meaning. He's got all the talent in the world. He's got all the treasure in the world, but he's got no really understanding of purpose or meaning. And in his eagerness to make his life feel full, in his eagerness to just find stuff that will fill him, he is just eagerly chasing fulfillment, and he's trying anything and everything he can find to fill the void in his life. So he's running as fast as he possibly can towards things that he feels will make his life feel good. He wants to feel good. We all want to feel good. But what he's finding out is the types of things he's pursuing, they're actually a lie. Because the more he fills his life with the drugs, the alcohol, the fame, the music, he's actually not even feeling full. He's actually kind of feeling more empty. And in actuality, what he's experiencing is very similar to what a certain King Solomon felt in 1 Kings 4. And the Bible has this great description of King Solomon in 1 Kings 4. It says that he is the wisest man to have ever lived. Pretty solid title, right? I mean, I would be okay with that. And that is really a cool title, but see, Solomon had all this wealth, he had all this power, much like Brian Welch, he had a lot of power and a lot of wealth. But you know what? Next to Solomon, Brian Welch is kind of a pauper. In fact, let's put it in perspective this morning. Let's take the richest man over most of the last few decades. Let's take Bill Gates. So Bill Gates is extremely wealthy, and they estimate that at his peak, when Bill Gates was at his wealthiest, he was worth around $144 billion. Pretty good amount. I mean, what would you do with $144 billion? By the way, there is a building campaign we're doing right now. No, but what would you do with $144 billion? So we would say, from our perspective, Bill Gates is impossibly wealthy. I don't know what each of you do, but most of us here in this room will never even approach that number. Not even if inflation goes out of control, we won't get close. And that seems incredibly wealthy, and you're right, it is incredibly wealthy, until you put Bill up against Solomon. Because when you take Solomon's possessions and his wealth and you sort of do some economic stuff and you take it and you put it into American dollars and you adjust for inflation and the difference in time periods, you find out that Solomon's wealth was in the neighborhood of $2 trillion, which dwarfs Bill. That's actually 10% of the gross domestic product of the entire United States. So Solomon really, really had it all. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. He had the women, he had the money, he had the power and the wealth. He had everything he wanted, and he even had God's favor somehow on top of that. So much so that when God had to choose someone to build the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem, he chose Solomon. So somehow, despite all the things that Solomon had, he was able to also have God's favor. If there was anyone, you would think, that had experienced fulfillment in life and felt like he was on the right track and could coast through life, you'd think it'd be Solomon, wouldn't you? I mean, he's got everything. But we're about to discover something that Solomon discovered, that it is possible to have everything the world offers, but to still feel empty. It's possible to have everything, but still feel empty. So this is what we find, the words of Solomon in Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes 1 through 8 says this: the words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets, and it hurries back. Round it goes wherever it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they will return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear is full of hearing. Remember, this is Solomon, the wisest man and one of the wealthiest men at the time to have ever lived. Does this sound like a man who has it all? Like a man who's ready to coast through life, that he's fulfilled? Doesn't it actually much more sound like a man who's depressed and doesn't really understand why he should keep living? Isn't that much more what it sounds like? In fact, doesn't this sound just a little bit like Brian saying, I pursued all this great stuff and found out it's actually a lie? Eerily similar. But maybe that's us this morning. Maybe we're saying, I kind of understand this. I feel like I'm the sea, and I keep saying, I want this stream to flow into me, and this stream to flow into me, and this stream to flow into me. All these things need to feed me, and yet I'm never full. That's what Solomon's saying. I am the sea, and it's never full. But let's go back to Brian for a minute. See, the pursuit of more is extremely addictive. And I just want to give you a heads up that this next clip, it can be a little disturbing. It has the lyrics to a corn song in it. Brian is going to illustrate what he was feeling, and it may be a little disturbing, so bear with me. Brian's daughter has woken an awareness in Brian about some things that are going on in his life, and it's one that it's really something that we have to pay attention to in our own lives, something that we need to make sure isn't there, because it is possible actually to have everything the world has to offer, yet hurt people we care about. We've been chasing stuff, we've been chasing the dream, and we forget that there's people that are walking beside us on the journey. In life, as we travel, we tend to pick things up. And a lot of things that we pick up are great. We start out in life, and maybe we pick up a career. We say, I know what I want to do with my life. We pick up a career. Maybe we pick up a hobby. Maybe woodworking, maybe metalworking. We pick up a hobby. Then we say, I really feel like there's a spiritual need in my life. So we pick up a relationship with God. Maybe we met this girl, we met this guy, and so we get married. And then maybe we say, I want to do something for fun, so I'm going to join a club. Great. Life is good, right? Now see, I have this stuff, and it's part of my life, and I have it, and it's not weighing me down. I have full mobility. I can, do whatever I want to do. Everything's good, right? All these things are a great part of life. I can still have satisfaction. I can still pursue different goals that I have for my life. But as humans, we have this constant desire, this need for more. We have a constant need for more. Now, psychology and physiology, those people that research those topics, they tell us about this, as an example, about a chemical called dopamine. And dopamine is really interesting because it is released, it's a pleasure chemical for the brain, and it's released when we experience different things in our lives. So if we eat something sweet that we really like, peanut butter cups, anybody? Peppermint patties? All right, a couple peppermint patties, it's all right. Hershey bars, straight up old school. All right. So when we eat something that we like, it releases dopamine into the brain, and it says, oh, I like that. I want more of that. Same thing if you get a really good workout. If you have any gym rats in here, you work out, and the dopamine starts flowing, and you start feeling good. And so that's awesome, and it works. But we also know this about dopamine. It works very well. It works very quickly. It's very effective, and it doesn't last very long at all. And your body constantly wants more of that. It likes that feeling. It wants more and more. The problem is that all humans are addicted to that feeling, and they all want more. We constantly want more of it. So even though we have enough stuff in here to be content, we also have this desire at all times for more. We say, well, our bag has stuff in it, but look, there's so much more space. There must be so much more that I can get from my life. Now, King Solomon saw this exact thing and experienced this exact thing. Remember, again, King Solomon, really wealthy, but listen to what he says in Ecclesiastes 5, and I'm going to read this from the Message because I feel like the Message puts an awesome spin on this. The one who loves money is never satisfied with money, nor the one who loves wealth with big profits. It's more smoke. The more loot you get, the more looters show up. And what fun is that to be robbed in broad daylight? In other words, the more money you make, the more ways you find to spend it. Hard and honest work earns a good night's sleep, whether supper is beans or steak. But a rich man's belly gives him insomnia. So here's a piece of bad luck that I've seen happen, Solomon says. A man hoards far more wealth than is good for him, and then he loses it all in a bad business deal. He fathered a child, but he doesn't have a cent left to give that child. He arrived naked from the womb of his mother. He'll leave in the same condition with nothing. This is bad luck for sure. Naked he came, naked he went. So what was the point of working for a salary of smoke? It's all for a miserable life spent in the dark. This is Solomon. And you know what he's wrestling with? He's saying, I have all the wealth I could ever want, but I still want more. I still want more. Why is that? And why would I pursue something that I know is meaningless? He's wrestling with this thought. And maybe we're wrestling with that thought this morning. We say, I actually have something pretty good here, but as we've traveled, we've said, I still have so much space in my bag, so you know what we're going to do? We're going to add a few additional hours at work, more than what we really need, because we want to do some cool stuff with more money. And we say, now that I have money, I'm going to buy, a luxury car. Nothing wrong with luxury cars. We say, new technology will solve all my problems. I love technology. I'm going to just, throw on a new watch, and we're going to throw in an iPhone, and maybe for your Android people, we're going to do that. So we have really cool technology now. And then we say, in fact, I'm just going to go on my 47 forms of social media, and I'm going to make sure that I feel like I have community. Now, some of you are already seeing the problem I'm about to have here, because I'm not a gym rat anymore. But none of these rocks are bad, are they? Not a single one of these things is illegal. None of them are immoral. There's nothing wrong with pursuing any of these things. Most of us have at some point. But what's happening here? Our life, our bag, is starting to feel kind of full. I mean, I can still move around. I can still have mobility, but now I got to think about this, don't I? Now I got to think about this. Now I don't have quite the same mobility I had before. And what's worse is despite all the stuff I'm putting in, whatever I put in, I feel good for a moment, but the emptiness is still yawning. There's still so much space. There's still so much space. So we need to keep, obviously, filling the space. We always want more. We always want more. We're always pursuing fulfillment. So we say, I need more. And so for Brian, where we picked up Brian's story, he's at this spot right now. And he's saying, I still have space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start down the drug train. All right? That's what I'm going to do. And so maybe we think, well, if it worked for Brian, maybe it'll work for me. So we're going to start experimenting with some drugs. Take a little bit of drugs. And you know what's funny about drugs? Not really funny, more like devastating. When you start taking drugs, when an addict starts down the path of being an addict, they take the drugs because they want to feel good. Their life might already be great, but they want an even higher high. They want to feel even better, so they start taking the drug. But what happens is the more into that habit they get, the more hooked they get, they stop taking drugs to feel good. They actually start taking drugs to not feel bad. And that's a critical change, because no longer are they taking the drugs because it makes them feel good. They're just trying to avoid the down, the lows. They're so afraid of feeling bad because their whole life is to become involved with the high. So they're desperately trying to find the high. And the drugs that at one time, as Brian said, the drugs that one time his significant other had control over, now had control over her. And Brian was headed for the same thing. But maybe drugs aren't our thing. Maybe that didn't work. Maybe drugs weren't enough. So we say, you know what? My marriage has been kind of like lackluster, and I really don't know what to do with it. So I'm going to add an affair to spice things up a little bit. I'm going to carry that with me. So we have that now, and you say, but I still have this emptiness. So I've been thinking about this Jesus thing, and I know I go to church on Sundays and stuff, and that's fine, but it's not very fun, and I really need some cooler people to hang out with. So I'm going to go downtown, I'm going to visit 2nd Street, and I'm going to see what happens down there, and I'm going to invest my life in that. So now, you kind of start to see a problem. We have a realization. We start to think, I'm starting to have some problems pursuing the things that I want to do. Things in my life are starting to get really, really hard. And I'm tired all the time. And I'm weary. And I feel like everywhere I go, I'm just worn out. And more than that, when we're carrying this, we start to affect everybody around us too. We have trouble being a good husband or a good wife because we're dragging this. We have trouble maintaining important relationships because we've got so many side things happening. We have trouble keeping a good career and moving forward because we're just in a cloud of stuff. So not only do we have way too much stuff and it's way too heavy, but our stuff is fighting one another. So what are we going to do? We do what most humans do. We say, you know what? I know what. I'll fix it myself. So we say, you know what? I know the problem is that my bag is too full, so I'm going to chuck a few things out. So we look in here and we say, you know what? My marriage meant something at one time, but this affair is really fun right now. We say, you know what? I know that my career was important to me at one time. I know that I really was on a great path moving forward. But, when I look at my career and I think about how much fun I'm having with these drugs, you say, you know what? I know that my relationship with God was really important at one time. I know that it really meant a lot to me, but these cool people I'm hanging out with, I'm the hero every Friday night. See, we tend to throw out the wrong things. And for a minute, we feel better because, our bag's suddenly lighter for a moment. But what we've done is we've added another problem. Because along with our bag still kind of being heavy, we're back to being empty again. And we've got regret. Because now we've got all these broken pieces. We've got broken people that we've left behind. We're actually compounding our problem. And ultimately, the same cycle continues. We put more stuff in, and we up our drug usage, and we loosen our morals some more because we have to feel full. And we reach a harsh realization at some point on this journey while we're carrying this bag. We start to realize that this whole time that we have been dragging this, we're actually not even walking the right direction. We've been dragging this all over creation. We've been walking with it every day, carrying it around with us in front of everyone, and we weren't even going the right way. We lost our direction at some point. We lost our purpose. We lost our meaning. We don't remember why we have this bag. We don't remember why it's so heavy. So we're left with an important decision to make in our lives. We can keep just dragging the bag, aimlessly drag the bag, or we can look for an alternative. Incredible. Brian Welch, he found something that would fill the bag, but not weigh him down. He found an important truth, and that's when we reach out our hands to God, rather than just only reaching out for what the world has to offer, we can find love, meaning, and purpose, the things that Brian was really looking for the whole time. See, the ironic thing about this is it's difficult to reach your hands to God when you've got this in your hands. See, through God's love, Brian starts a process of rearranging his priorities, of sorting out his bag, of putting his life back on the path. Brian learns something powerful that he never learned before. He learns what genuine love looks like. It's not the lust that they sang about in the corn songs, and it's not some abstract, pie-in-the-sky, unobtainable truth. It's real, and it's genuine, and it's relationship with God and the power that brings, the power of change that brings. So he has found out that there's something that will fill the bag, and it will feel full no matter what stuff is in there. And with it, it always feels full, but without it, it doesn't matter how much we cram in there, it's not going to feel full. 1 Corinthians 13 tells us that without love, everything the world offers us will feel meaningless, just as Solomon's story shows us, just as Brian's story shows us, maybe just as your story feels like today. But through God's love, Brian's able to experience the effect of the verse that this real estate agent, I think his name was Eric, showed him. He was finally able to understand and experience the power of Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. It says, come to me, all who are broken, and I will give you rest. Come to me, all of you who are dragging something behind you, and I will give you rest. Come to me, all of you who are dealing with broken marriages and strained relationships, and I will give you rest. Come to me, all of you who don't even understand where your life has ended up, and you're confused, and you're lost, and you're hurting. Come to me, and I will give you rest. See, Jesus is inviting Brian. It's an open invitation. He's inviting you. He's inviting me. He says, come to me, bring all your stuff, and I will give you rest. See, some of us are so tempted to always say, when somebody says, hey, how are you doing? We say, oh, I'm great. Life is fine. And, that's an appropriate social answer. But Jesus sees behind our back that we're dragging 12 anchors, and we're just struggling through life, and we've almost come to a standstill, and we're struggling. And maybe that's your case this morning. We have burdens that are just piled up on our backs, and we are so incredibly, unexplainably weary. So what if we would just, surrender to God, lift our hands up to God? Literally, figuratively, mentally, it doesn't matter. But direct it toward God and say, God, help with these burdens. Help. See, Brian Welch is no preacher. He is no saint. He did not go to Bible school. What he was is a talented sinner who figured out who God was and how much he loved him. That was his exposure to the gospel. It was one verse. Brian Welch became a man who was willing to say, you know what, God, my way, and I've tried every way, my way is not working anymore. I keep trying to fill the bag and it's just always empty. So Lord, take control of my stuff. Help me with my priorities. He was willing to do that. He figured out that The bag could be full, but it could also be light. And the coolest part of this is a verse that didn't even come into the video. Because later on in Matthew 11, Jesus says this, "Take my yoke on you, for it is light and easy." Now, those of you who may be farmers already know what a yoke is, but if not, a yoke is something where they would hitch oxen or horses to a plow so that they could pull heavy loads together. What Jesus is saying here is that if you're heavily burdened, take my yoke on you. You say, well, if I'm already heavy burdened, why would I take another yoke on me? But listen to this. This is really important. Because when you take the yoke on you, you put this down and you pick up a new bag. Because what Jesus says is that this new bag, it may not always have light stuff in it. You may not have all new stuff, but I am going to help you pull it. He says, join with me. Take my yoke because I'm on the other side of the yoke. I am carrying the bag. So let me just remind you this morning that there has never been a load invented that Jesus cannot pull. I don't care if you're a Ford guy, a Chevy guy, or a Dodge guy. Jesus will pull all three of you. Jesus helps you pull. So if you're weary this morning, and if you need to rearrange your stuff, if life is chaos and it's gotten out of order, and you feel like you are dragging the bag everywhere, I encourage you to listen to the words of Matthew 11. Give Jesus a chance to walk through Matthew 11 with you. Say, do these steps first. Come to Jesus. It sounds so simple. Billy Graham used to say it all the time. First, come to Jesus. Bring your bag with you. Bring it with you. You don't have anything that Jesus has not seen before. He is not intimidated. We all have stuff that we bring to God. Bring it along. Because Jesus said, come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. All means you. All means me. Secondly, offer all your stuff to God. Offer it all. You know, God is really good at taking care of what he owns. So why not say, God, my stuff came from you. My resources are from you. Everything in this life is from you. So I'm going to give it back and say, you take control. Because you're way better at maintaining this pile than I am. God, teach me how to use my resources. God, teach me how to maintain relationships. Take control. And finally, third, enjoy the rest. Enjoy the rest. Enjoy the change that happens in you and in the people around you as you stop trying to carry the weight of the world by yourself, and instead you hook up to Jesus' yoke and you pull it together. And what happens is your bag actually changes because it's no longer full of stuff you don't want. It becomes full of the stuff you can't leave behind. Your bag is full of love, and it's full of peace, and it's full of joy. And what happens is your bag actually starts to overflow because it's so full. And you feel like, I need to give away some of this hope. I need to give away some of this love. I need to give away some of this peace so that others who are heavy, burdened, and weary and are dragging the bag can understand what the power of genuine love is, just like Brian did. See, today, you can be done dragging the burdens, and you can start transporting love. You can start sharing peace. You can start living in hope. And wow, what an incredible difference that might make in your life. Let's pray. God, this morning, I just feel the weight of so many different things. And Lord, I know my burdens. And I don't know the burdens of the different people in this room. Everyone's got a bag full of different stuff. We all have one. But Lord, this morning, I pray that each of us that are dragging the bag would at least consider taking those steps, that we would come to you as we are in front of you right now and say, God, there's this pile of stuff that's weighing me down. I'm going to give you control. We're going to take that second step. We're going to give you control. And we're going to say, God, you know what to do with this. I don't, so please help. Please help. Let your love flow into me and guide me. And Lord, I pray that today, if we do those things, if we genuinely offer them to you, that we would feel such incredible relief. That we would feel liberated, that we would feel like even though we still have stuff in our bag, Lord, that you are on the other side and you are pulling. And Lord God, the yoke went from hard to light, to easy, because you are incredibly strong. And there is not a burden that you cannot carry. Lord, I pray that we would walk in that newfound victory, in that newfound peace, in that newfound freedom. And Lord, more than that, to share it with someone else that we see today, to share it with someone else in our workplace tomorrow, to share it with someone that we run across all the time, but Lord, have never given a second to give them hope. Lord, that is your message. And Brian has given me hope through his story. And I pray, Lord, that each person here that hears it would, Lord, give someone else hope. That someone else would have love because of what was done here today. Lord, I pray that you would take our burdens. In your name, amen.